before I start, let me just say the following things. First of all, there are no lady presenters here. I don't know if there are no capable women to also join the panel. I thought that it was important to have, since the dean of the faculty is a lady, I think next time you could do with more ladies on the panel. The second one is that Raymond told you he's wearing a red sweater because of the mobile money tax. I think he's doing so because of people power. But we can debate that, because in that picture that he was seen locking arms, the president of the People Power Group was right next to him. But that said, let me use my 5 minutes to say the following things. First, to understand the impact of the tax on mobile money and OTT on human rights and civic space, you have to appreciate the legislative history, the mischief that the framers of the law intended to cure. If you don't appreciate that, you may not understand the tax in context. There is the intended purpose, the stated purpose of the tax, and the intended purpose of the tax. And to understand that, you have to look at the events preceding the introduction of the tax. The events are the following. In the last election, there was a shutdown of social media on election day between February 18 to February 21st of 2016. It wasn't just social media. Mobile money transactions were also suspended by the Uganda Communications Commission. The reasons advanced at the time for the actions of the state were that mobile money was going to be used to threaten public safety and public order, were that social media was going to be used to jeopardize the country's security. No evidence was advanced as to why or how social media and mobile money would be used to disrupt public safety and public order. In the period in which social media was suspended, the following events happened. Two presidential candidates were detained under house arrest. Dr. Kiza Besigye and Amama Mbabazi were prevented from leaving their houses. Several people were arrested for posting pictures on Facebook, notably those who posted the picture of Museveni in a coffin. The second time social media was suspended was on the day President Museveni was being sworn in May of the same year. Again, a couple of things happened when social media was shut down. There were several people arrested. There were violent scenes captured by print media of security services suppressing demonstrations, particularly those who tried to walk to work. So quite clearly what is evident is that the shutdown of social media is an attempt by the state to shield themselves from scrutiny and create darkness in the face of state repression. It is also an attempt to disrupt the free flow of information and to curtail the impact of ordinary people on political processes. Thirdly, history will tell you that shutdown of social media and mobile money transactions is associated with state violence. That they go hand in hand with state violence, whether it's in Uganda, in Egypt, in Sudan, in China, or indeed in Turkey. In periods where there are protests, the state seeks to defeat those protests by shutting down social media. That is the context in which social media tax was introduced. But two other events are important to also note. The first is the attempt by the Uganda Communications Commission to trace and find the true identity of TVO. Uganda Communications Commission has made 12 requests to Facebook in Menlo Park in Palo Alto, the headquarters of Facebook, for Facebook to disclose the identity of TVO, alleging that TVO is a threat to national security. All these requests notably were rejected by Facebook. The second one is the suit by Fred Muwema against Facebook, first in San Francisco and then subsequently in Ireland. The case of Fred Muwema versus Facebook Ireland Limited was a veiled and disguised attempt by the state, again, to disclose and find the identity of TVO and online activists. Even though these cases were dismissed by the courts in Ireland, what is important to learn about them is that there has been every attempt to find people on social media who are either dissenting voices or are against the government of Uganda. Not to mention the famous cases of Stella Nyanzi, the cases of Shaka Robert, an employee of the US Embassy. So that is the context in which the tax on social media was introduced. Now, what is the impact of that tax? As the other presenters have said, the state has the obligation to levy tax. They can levy tax on anything, but tax must be levied for progressive purpose, to encourage investment, to encourage raising of revenue for development of a country. The impact of the tax on social media can only be understood within the limitations accorded to the state in derogating from fundamental rights and freedoms. As the President said, Article 43 allows the state to derogate from certain rights. In other words, even though access to the internet has been declared by the UN Human Rights Council as a basic human right, it is not an absolute right, and therefore the state can derogate from it. But in doing so, that derogation is not a justification for anyone to trample on any right. To understand the limitations upon the state, you have to look at the judgment of the Supreme Court in Constitutional Appeal number 2 of 2002, the case of Charles Nyangobo Andrew Mwenda versus the Attorney General. The case that challenged Section 50 of the Penal Code Act about the publication of false news. Justice Mulenga went a long distance in describing the import of Article 43 of the Constitution and said that Article 43 is a limitation upon limitation. It is not a justification for the derogation of rights, but gives the state an additional responsibility to show that the limitations that they seek to impose are limitations that are justifiable in a free and democratic society. So is the tax on social media and mobile money really a limitation that is reasonable, justifiable in a free and democratic society? It's a question you can discuss, but my view is that it is not. It is akin to the tax on tobacco. Throughout the history of those who have studied cancers, the tax on tobacco was supposed to discourage consumption of tobacco because tobacco was seen as causing health problems. It is also akin to the tax on alcohol to limit the effect of alcohol. But unlike the taxes on alcohol and tobacco, where there is ample scientific evidence of the impact of alcohol and cigarettes on people's health, there is absolutely no basis there's no factual basis for taxation of social media and mobile money. In fact, there's every argument against it. States that have imposed these taxes or this kind of restrictions tend to be less democratic states, tend to be states in which innovation by the people in those countries are not something to be proud of. And therefore, my argument is that the tax on social media was an unjustifiable limitation on the freedom of information, on the freedom of expression, and limits the use of social media to those who have. As Brian argued in the morning, it is discriminatory and amounts to unjustifiable restriction on those freedoms. The second impact, really, of this tax, again, has to be I thought you were clapping because of my point, but when I looked around, clearly it was not. Clearly it was not. The second impact of social media tax has to be viewed within the context of the political situation in the country. Social media has empowered citizens to be able to hold states to account, has played significant roles in revolutions such as the Egyptian revolution. The stated impact and the intended impact of the state is to really limit this space as a space for activism and mobilization. In that respect, social media tax and the tax on mobile money is an unjustifiable restriction on the freedom to political participation by several people in this country. Lastly, just to say that social media tax has received wide condemnation from across the world, from the UN Human Rights Council to several other agencies of the UN and the African Union. I think that the tax is unjustifiable, it's unlawful, it is immoral, I think it is illegitimate, and therefore I hope that the courts will declare the tax unlawful and quash it. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's already afternoon, right? Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Would like to recognize the presence of Mr. Norbert Mao. A round of applause, please. And we thank. Okay. So, Law Society. So, wait. Where is she? She's not there. No, she's not there. Is Miss Ananda around? Ananda.